Hello and welcome. This is your instructor, Dennis Westman. Today we're going to talk about a new program that probably a lot of you are not familiar with, and this is Microsoft Access. Now, if you use your textbook, please refer to the section Unit A, which is Access 2007, and we're going to talk a little bit about what Microsoft Access is and how it's used in the business world. Now, again, this is probably one of the programs that you all will be least familiar with. In the past, we've talked about Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and you've used probably elements of those. But Access is one of those programs that's probably not used nearly as much as some of the other ones. And so you'll definitely want to make sure that you carefully read Unit A in the Access section so you have a much better handle on what exactly Access is, what exactly a database is, and so on. So let's get out your textbook and let's look at Access page 2. And Microsoft Access is a database software program that uses relational databases to manage data that is organized into lists. And this is just taken directly from the section in your book, Unit A, page 2. And when you think about databases and using Microsoft Access, you probably create databases or use databases all the time. You're just not familiar with it. For instance, your files or your folders that you have in a filing cabinet at home, that's actually a database. You have individual items stored in those folders, then you have groups of folders together, sometimes even grouped together by a drawer, and then that entire drawer is part of a filing cabinet. And so again, you probably use databases, you're just not aware of it. Anytime you use your debit card and your bank's keeping track of that information in a database, you're using Blackboard. And Blackboard is just nothing but a database, and then it puts a nice pretty view on the front end, so when users access it, it looks nice. But essentially Blackboard is just a database. So if you look on page 2, the advantages of using Access for database management is duplicate data is minimized, information is more accurate and reliable, data entry is faster and easier, you can get all sorts of reports, and then essentially multiple users can edit and change the information simultaneously. And so a database, a relational database using Microsoft Access can be extremely important and extremely efficient. Now, section 4 or page 4 on Unit A talks about actually opening a database, so you'll want to get comfortable with opening up Access and starting the database. And then on page 6 it talks about entering the data into a table, and let me just point out, this, if I had to say that you needed to work through a chapter and that would be the most important one to work through for this class, it would be the Access chapter, especially Unit A, because this is going to be new and foreign to a lot of you. And you'll definitely want to work through the sections. Page 8 talks about editing the data, and essentially it looks a lot like Excel. Like an Excel spreadsheet, rows and columns. You just use your arrow keys to go through and actually edit the data. Now, page 10 talks about creating a database using something like a template, which is a sample database. And again, if you follow the wizard and the steps, you'll get a database that will help you to get started quickly without having to go through all the steps manually. And then creating a table is actually a subset of the database. A database holds everything, and then you can have multiple tables within the database that pertain to certain bits of information. And so on page 12 it talks a little bit about creating a table. So a database is the overall item, and then tables are individual collections of data within the database. And then it just talks about specifying the data type, whether it's going to be numeric or alphanumeric, and so on. Oh, and if you look on page 13 at the bottom, that's the different types of data types that are available in Microsoft Access. Primary key, this is talked about on Access page 14, and this is going to be one of those topics that are probably pretty foreign to most of you, but it actually is pretty straightforward. Have you ever noticed when you come to the college and every office uses the same key element from you, the student, to look up your information? They use a student ID, they used to use a social security number. That actually is a primary key. That allows us to not duplicate records of students, because think about this. A lot of you may have the same last name. Well, that can't work as a primary key because that's not unique and it doesn't uniquely identify you to us whenever we pull up your information. And so we need something unique. And for a primary key, the uniqueness is usually like a unique number, like a social security number or a student ID. And so that primary key allows us to avoid duplicates and to pull you up quickly without having to go through the process of trying to figure out, which last name matches which student and so on. So you're using a primary key whenever you're giving the information to the registrar's office, financial aid office, business office, and so on, whenever you're trying to pull up, whenever they're trying to pull up your information. And if you look at the top of page 14, it talks about the two important services or purposes that a primary key serves. It contains data that uniquely identifies each record, and then no two data records can have the exact same entry in the designated field. And then the primary key also helps one table relate to another table. So for instance, there might be a table in the business office, financial aid office, and the registrar. Those three tables are related to one another by a primary key. That primary key is unique, and that primary key for you all is the student ID. And so you go to the different offices, but you always give the same bit of information because that primary key is used throughout all of our entire systems here at the college. Definitely read through 14 because it really is one of those topics that if you're not familiar with, sort of is kind of out there. Page 16 just goes into more detail about relating two tables. So relating the business office and the financial aid office with some common element. What would that be? That would be your student ID. Both of those tables can be related or connected together with a common data element, which in this case would be your student ID. That's relating two tables together, talked about on page 16. You can print the data sheet. This is just your data. This is talked about on page 18. Maybe you want to print and preview it, see what it looks like, and so on. Again, that's on page 18. Okay, well, as usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or post to the lab discussions, and I'll be happy to answer them. And good luck this week when we're talking about access. And please be sure to read all the information because it's going to be extremely important that you do. Thank you, and have a great day.